Coaches create worlds in which athletes learn to act.
The world of a coach can be enlightening and inspiring,
or harmful to the athletes under their influence.
The organization we chose to do our case study on is the UMD Women's Basketball All-Girls Camp, ran in the summer by the head coach Annette Wiles and the UMD players. The coaches at this camp have an opportunity to make an impact on 200 to 300 young kids' lives every summer. The kids at this camp hopefully learn basketball skills, but also some life lessons as well. The purpose of this case study is to highlight big ideas from qualified educational professionals Dr. Julia Williams, Dr. Roger Schenk, and Dr. Pasi Salberg, and applied them to the women's basketball camp. There is no way we can pick apart every aspect of the 3-day basketball camp in 10 minutes, but we will be highlighting areas in which we feel the camp excels, and in contrast, areas in which the camp can improve.
The first big idea that we wanted to discuss was goal-based learning. There are two ideas that fall under the category of goal-based learning that we wanted to look at when we examined the UMD women's basketball camp. The first has to do with making sure there are clear goals that we are aiming to accomplish. Williams says no one can aim with confidence at what cannot be seen. We feel that what Williams is saying is that you are more likely to learn successfully when expectations are clear and a goal is present. We found that this applied to the stations during camp because each station has a specific fundamental goal that was emphasized and clear to the campers. They knew what was expected and what skills they were supposed to work on to get better. The second main idea under goal-based learning is setting goals that interest the kids. Throughout Teaching Minds, Shank talks about kids are going to learn when they think the subject matter is important for the current goal. On page 90, Shank says, the goal must be those that a student already has. A way in which we found the program could improve on using this idea that learning begins with a goal is to ask the kids at the beginning of camp what they're interested in and what they would like to get better in. This makes the kids think critically on what is important to them, and by establishing goals within themselves, they are able to want to get better and actually strive to do so. We found this to be huge when doing stations because if the particular skill being taught was not of interest to the campers, then there is little effort shown to get better.
Another big idea that we're going to touch on is critical thinking. Shank said, if you are trying to find your way around a city, you will learn the streets of that city and develop what is called a cognitive map. If you try to memorize those same streets, it simply won't work. And I think what Shank is saying here is it's a lot easier to learn information if you have to critically think about the situation as opposed to just simply trying to memorize facts on their own. Another quote that I want to bring up here is said by Williams on page 72. She said, I think we have always known that learning is a natural act, that knowledge is of value to the heart and the mind and the spirit, and that wisdom is earned by processing information through the heart and the soul, through trial and error, and through failure and triumph. Critical thinking takes place when it is planned and monitored by teachers or coaches, but it also naturally happens when the topic of discussion is interesting to the people trying to learn it. For me personally, it's easier to remember things when I enjoy what I'm doing and what I'm dealing with, but also when I have to critically think about the information. I think at basketball camp, we need to try to help the kids understand the whole situation and what links the individual aspects of the game. Like when we're doing stations, we need to link those to the entire game. I think that at basketball camp we can do a better job of asking the kids, what do you want to learn? And making them think about how those fundamental skills pertain to the game as a whole. I think we do a good job of helping the kids improve these individual skills, but we often just tell them why we are practicing these skills, but we don't do a very good job of linking the skills to the game. And I think the whole critical thinking aspect, we can do a lot better job of asking the kids, so why do you think that this individual skill is important to the entire game? And more have a discussion with them about it instead of just telling them. So this is why this is important, and now we're going to do it. And more engage them in the conversation.
Another big idea that we want to touch on is collaboration. Williams writes, "School leaders today are finding more and more ways to be collaborative, to share decision making rather than retain an authority that becomes crippling and ineffective over time." Here, Williams is addressing the importance of collaboration in terms of improving the different levels of teaching and decision making in order to have a positive outcome and impact in students' lives. For example, if a teacher is teaching a certain way and ends up with a low percentage of students that pass, it is vital that they collaborate and come up with new methods of teaching. It would be unwise and ineffective to continue to teach the way they do so when students are not responding. An example of this in our camp that we do is when we find ourselves constantly collaborating with one another. For example, at the end of each camp, we as coaches get together and discuss things that we felt went well that year and things that should be changed for the next year or for the next camp. We are always trying to improve camps to make it both fun and enjoyable for our campers, as well as provide a place for athletes to get better. Another example of collaboration is when we break the girls off into groups for actual 5-on-5 games. Here, we as coaches are not in the game and we are not playing with the girls, so they have to learn to work together and fix issues when they arise. Another fun example we do at camp is when we break off all the campers into groups and give them 20 minutes to come up with a skit or fun cheer that they will later present to the rest of the camp. This is a time when coaches are allowed to sit back and observe and watch as the girls work together to come up with their skits. Another idea that we want to touch on is presented in Selberg. As he writes, "An important and voluntary part of Finnish teachers' work is devoted to school improvement and work with the community. This includes curriculum development, experimentation with teaching methods from others, and collaboration with parents as important aspects of their work and outside of classrooms." So this is important in basketball and in the camps. Or when we meet at the end of the year and we decide, what needs to be fixed, we have to together come up with ways to fix them or come up with new ways to teach different aspects of basketball to the girls that is going to be more enjoyable and effective for later use.
Instruction is the next big idea that I'm going to touch on. On page 39, Pastor Selberg states that instruction is the key element that makes a difference in what students learn in school, not standards, assessments, or alternative instructional programs. Selberg goes on to talk about how in Finland, 1/10 of the total applicants are accepted into the teaching programs, and they select their primary school teachers from the top 20% of the high school graduates. Also, teachers in Finland need a master's degree to teach. My coach always starts out every pre-camp meeting by stressing that people around this table, the UMD players who are going to be coaches for this camp, are going to make this camp the best it can be for the kids. We are the ones that have an opportunity to help these kids have a great time at camp and hopefully learn more and get better at their basketball skills. Dr. Williams talks about how teachers can be both compassionate and in charge. At camp, the coaches have to try to do this. We have to be compassionate and show that we care about every kid out there, and we also have to be in charge because there are so many kids at camp. Every coach has to learn how to balance between these two things, and for some, this is a very easy task, while for others, this can be hard to figure out how to balance. I think that Coach Wiles does a great job of stressing to all of us coaches that we will make or break the camp experience for these campers. She tells us how much of an impact we have on the kids, not only in what we say, but also in what they see us doing. I think that an area that the UMD basketball camp can improve is by giving the UMD players more opportunities to work with young kids other than this 1 or 2 camp periods in the summer and possibly one time throughout the year. It takes repetition to become a good instructor, a good coach to these young individuals.
Another big idea that we decided to analyze was learning by making mistakes. Schenk says on page 87, this process of expectation failure followed by explanation is at the heart of learning. We feel that what Schenk is saying is that it is more helpful to learn by making mistakes rather than just being told everything. We found that during the duration of the camp, girls learned better when mistakes were made and they were able to be critiqued on them. They were able to understand what they were doing wrong and how they can improve or fix the problem for the next time. Being able to critique them and having them actually acknowledge what they were doing wrong was more beneficial than saying, hey, work on this next time, because there was no direction in that and they didn't understand the how-to part of improving what they were doing. A way in which the program could improve on this idea is being more consistent when critiquing the kids and making sure they actually understand what they did wrong and how to improve it for the next time. A lot of times, as a player or coach, we don't want to be constantly telling the kids what they're doing wrong, but at the same time, not doing so is not helping the kids learn.
I'm going to summarize what we just learned about the UMD Women's Basketball Camp. The first big idea was goal-based learning. The camp does a good job of implementing goal-based learning during the fundamental stations. A way that UMD could improve in this area is we could ask the kids at the start of the camp what they personally want to get better at, so they may be more motivated to learn. The second idea we talked about was critical thinking. UMD camp does a good job of this during 5-on-5 games when the kids are out there on their own and have to figure it out. We could do a better job with this by having the kids explain to us how all the fundamental drills link together to make the whole game. The third idea was collaboration. During camp, the coaches do a good job of discussing what worked during camp and together making changes, and the girls are given lots of opportunities to work in groups. We could do more co-coaching and have the kids teach each other in some situations. Instruction was the next idea. My coach does a great job of letting all of the UMD coaches know how much of an impact we make on the kids' experience at camp. We could do a better job, though, by giving UMD players more opportunities to coach kids. Experience makes a big difference. Finally, learning by making mistakes. UMD camp coaches do a good job of explaining to the kids what they did wrong so the kids can learn, but we can always work on being more consistent in our corrections with kids. Thanks for listening to our presentation about the UMD Women's Basketball Camp. We hope you learned a little something that you can use in your organization.